The decision makers question and the inoculation question are really important parts of the intake conversation. Make sure you don't skip them. Now, you know, in an intake conversation, which should be about 10 to 15 minutes long, typically, we've got 5 parts. We have the mini agenda, we have the intake questionnaire, the 3-step invitation process, the decision makers question, and the inoculation question. The decision makers question and the inoculation question, again, they are very, very powerful parts of that conversation. Don't ever skip them. Don't ever skip them. We've got a client that recently came through our intake training. And so they've got one team that's been through our intake training, another team that is going through it right now. The team that's been through the intake training, they ask the decision maker question and the inoculation question at the end. It's kind of like there's an A/B test. There's a huge difference in now the number of decision makers that are showing up at the consultations, and so few cancellations or no-shows. They've almost completely stopped canceling and no-showing. So what do? During the decision makers question, it's very simple. You're going to say, just like you learned in the training, you're going to say something like, listen, Mr. Smith, I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but at your consultation, if you do decide to move forward with our firm, who beside you would be involved in that decision? And we just want to find out, is there anybody else that would be involved? And a lot of the time they'll go, oh, no, there's nobody, it's just me. Make sure you ask a second time. Make sure you say something like, okay, so there's nobody that you need to discuss this with or run it by. And if they say, nope, just me, a second time, move to the inoculation question. If they say something like, oh, well, I do need to talk to my business partner, or, oh, I do need to talk to my spouse, or I need to talk to my best friend, or whatever. If they say, I need to talk to this person, or I need to run it by this person, make sure you clarify. Say something like, okay, when you say you need to run it by that person, does that mean that that person's going to be involved in the decision as to whether or not you work with us? Or do you just need to let them know what you're doing? Just like that. And if you come to find out that that other person is in fact going to be involved in the decision, make sure you ask them to have that person at the consultation. Remember, if we don't have all the decision makers at the consultation, we're not going to have a client. 99.9%, I'm sure that we're not going to have a client. And then finally, we have to make sure we're asking the inoculation question. The inoculation question will significantly decrease the number of no calls and no shows. I mean, I know it sounds like it's almost kind of silly, right? Because it's just this, you're just saying, oh, before we go, between now and X is your variable, the day and time of the consultation. Between now and X, what would cause you to call and cancel? So let's say you've scheduled the consultation for Monday at 8 a.m. You would say, oh, Mr. Smith, I almost forgot. Before we go, between now and Monday at 8 a.m., what would cause you to call and cancel? It seems so silly. Like, maybe they even paid for the consultation. And you're thinking, oh, Theophan, they paid. They'll be there. No, you'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes they are there a lot, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, 85% of the time, but other times they're not. Is it really going to hurt? Is it really going to hurt to ask that question? It takes 5 seconds. Oh, Mr. Smith, before we go, I almost forgot. Between now and Monday at 8, what would cause you to call and cancel? What if just asking that question reduces even further the number of people that are showing, or increases the number of people that are showing, just from that quick question? It makes a really big difference. Don't skip those parts. Make sure when you're having an intake conversation that at the end you're asking the decision makers question so that you can make sure all the decision makers are in the room for that consultation. And then second, you're asking the inoculation question, which again will significantly decrease the number of no calls and no shows. Don't skip that step. Don't skip either of those steps. Make sure you ask them every time.